I'm sort of excited for it. It's one of my favorite book series of all time. So,
It's Terry Pratchett, huh?
Robert Jordan,
Rob.
and then finished by Brandon Sanderson after Jordan passed away.
What's the time span between the first and the last book in the series?
In the book world or in
No, in terms of publication.
probably about 27 years.
Oh wow.
The first one dropped, I think, in 24 years. The first one dropped in 91, and the others came along. I think they finished it in.
All right, I think we're ready. Are we all ready to do this?
Yeah.
Very crunchy pear. I am ready.
All right, I've finally.
I was on mute because I was crunching quite a lot.
I've finally got a drink, and I'm finally drinking my monkey shoulder, and so I'm very happy. But yeah, welcome everyone to book 9 of our Sci-Fi on Ice book club, where we read short stories and talk about it. This week we're reading, we read Nightfall by Isaac Asimov, classic, and it's about like a world event. Apparently, there's this planet called Lagash, and it's it's a planet that normally has like constant daylight. It's got like 5 suns in its solar system. Well, solar system means one sun, right? But so it's always daylight, and then there's going to be this uh 2,500 year eclipse of darkness in which night falls. So quite an interesting premise. What do you guys think about this book? Dean, do you want to go first?
Okay. Well, it was pretty sci-fi-ish. Yeah, I mean, when you look at when it was written in the 1940s, it is, it's Isaac Asimov. He's the granddaddy of sci-fi. And as far as the short story goes, it was enjoyable. He is quite heavy on the dialogue, though.
Yeah, we found that with Waterclap, right?
Yeah. But yeah, apart from that, he spent some time doing world building. He did some character development. Some stuff happened, and they all went crazy. It was great.
Yeah. Okay. Sarah, what about you? What do you think about this story?
Yeah, not as keen as the others, because I found it quite confusing. I read like the first quarter the other day, and I read the rest on the way home now. And I guess that few days in between, I was like, wait, which one was Sheeran? Which one was Paramount? Which one was this? And they kept adding numbers afterwards, and it was like, do I need to remember that number? Am I going to come across another person with a different number with that same name? And like they kept going back and forth, I think, because of the dialogue. I found it a bit hard to follow exactly who was doing which action, especially with Sheeran and Theramon.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the ending, I guess, because it was a little bit more descriptive, was easier to follow. So yeah. But I like the concept. I mean, I think he does a good job describing what that sensation could be like after you've lived like 24/7 in sunlight. But it raises a question with me is, what is half a day there? Because I kept wondering, like, how long is it going to be dark for? And I went back and found it, and it says for at least well over half a day. But then I'm like, well, if they don't have half of dark, half of sunlight, if they have 6 suns, like, how long is a day? Are we assuming it's 24 hours still? So,
Jamie, stop that.
I guess intrigued that
Stop that, Jamie.
it actually is. But otherwise, yeah, it was okay. It was, yeah.
All right.
It's
What?
confusing.
Cool. Warren. What about your take? How do you like it?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. For a number of different reasons. Firstly, you got to give props to Isaac Asimov in the sense of understanding a problem that we're only going to just start realizing in our world now. I mean, literally like 80 years ago, in the sense of much like what Sarah was saying with the names, with the numbers associated with it. You know, if you just think in terms of the problem that we have with email addresses at the moment, you know, all the basic names have already been taken, so we're going into this weird realm of, you know, having to adjust alphanumeric type of things to our society, which is an interesting thing that's already included there. As far as the premise goes, and a world that doesn't know darkness, it's thoroughly intriguing. And from a professional perspective, I'm just not a psychologist. The description of claustrophobia and the associated stuff is probably, one of the most accurate descriptions I've ever read in terms of literature. In terms of getting to just that concept of, if you've never known darkness, the sheer terror that just even darkness for a few minutes is going to bring across. In a world that's never known light, imagine just the insanity of, firstly darkness coming, and secondly that there just being literally a sky full of stars. And so I thought it was interesting, very intriguing. I do agree it takes a little while to get into it in terms of what the hell is going on. Being dropped in with very little world building is always a bit of a shock, but yeah. And then when it starts coming across, thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was really well done, really well written. Of course, it was as Asimov, but still.
Right. Cheers for that. Yeah, I was terribly torn. As far as like thinking about how I liked it, the premise, is quite a remarkable thing to think about as a concept. The story writing for me was just awful. Just too much exposition, and I get that with science you want to sort of tell people, what's going on in the story, but as a reader, you want to relate to it, and you don't want to worry about difficult concepts. And in the copy that Sarah's got, I've highlighted a few sort of terms where they go into the science, and where they talk about the theory of gravity, or the I forget what it's called in the book, like the universal theory of gravity, which didn't really align with my understanding of gravity. Well, kind of, with masses and the distance, like inertia, basically. But that's when Sharon kind of tries to do the whole like, let me do the layman explanation of science, and and as a reader, okay, that's a bit more interesting when they do that. But so I felt terribly torn with this amazing premise, and just too much dialogue, too much exposition. But and it does come to a head at the end, which you do get some satisfying sort of relief, I guess, with the ending and what the story is trying to convey to us. So, with that said, let's move on to, I guess, what we found interesting in the story. So, Dean, have you got anything interesting from the story you want to
I
get
like
into?
the introduction of the cult.
Mm.
And I mean, in terms of general religions that they usually bring into sci-fi and stuff.
Yeah.
And especially in this case where it's the cyclical movement of time. So they don't say how many so many years there's the eclipse, but they do say the eclipse lasts for.
They talk about thousands, right?
Yeah.
It's
So
like 2.5 or something. Like it's
a
long.
cyclical civilization.
Right.
And I quite enjoyed it when they went into. I can't remember whether it was the cultist or
Yeah.
the actual astronomers that went into the details of the breakdown of history, and then
Or how they pass the knowledge from like one cycle to the next cycle.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, as with so many things that are passed down, kind of broken telephone-ish game, the distortion of information.
Well, see, like, it's a really good point because I sort of one thing that I will give to the story was that this it felt like the story was a science experiment that this that the author wanted to control and tell you like, look, in this situation, here are some possibilities, and but I think like the way how he tells how the information is carried from one cycle to the next, I thought that helped. The suspension of disbelief of, well, is that what happens? Is it the crazy people and the people uh, who there's like three kinds of people, right? That the
The blind, the under six, and the crazy.
yeah. So that helped, like, to carry that across. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the explanation of it and the tying it in with the psychological impact of it, and that is, I mean, it's not some collapse of world order due to war, or famine, or disease, or it's just basically our minds turning against us. It's the complete breakdown of stealth, and then that just spirals everything out. And it's something as simple as just the lights going out. And I suppose it just kind of harkens back to our own primitive brain, to the fact that you just take one stimulus away, and we're left drooling in the corner.
Right. So Warren, I quite liked how you brought up the that you could relate as a psychologist to the experience of, I guess, the deprivation of sight and, well, darkness and the effects it has on people. Do you want to go into that a bit more? Because I think that's quite interesting.
Well, I was actually just thinking, just from what you just said now. I mean, take our current society. As much as we all want to try and pretend that there is no fear of the dark, we have fear of the dark, and we know about darkness. We experience it on a daily basis. I imagine you have a society of people who've never been in the dark, been in light the whole time. It is a completely unknown situation. Even I mean, you have the point with the Port Theramon.
Yeah.
Where he almost, I mean, he loses it just because they close the curtain and make the room dark.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about it, it's an interesting premise. I personally, I don't think that from a professional perspective that I think society that detrimental or that would suffer that drastically from just a single stimulus or lack of a single darkness for a little bit. I mean, much like how they talk about the destruction of the cities and all of that because they're looking for light. By the mere presence of the flames, they shouldn't go insane because there is at least some sort of light and some source of light. But I think with regards to it, it comes down to the mind being presented with a stimulus or a situation that is entirely not able to deal with. And I mean, we see that on actual people when they get exposed to traumas that they've never been prepared for.
What did you think about was it the two guys? I think was it Pharaoh and Yemot? They do this random experiment just before like an impromptu experiment. They get that place like with a little dome and they make some holes in it, and but it sort of fails. And like, did you have any take on that? Like, why would they do so impromptu, and like, why was that a last minute thing?
I could sort of, because they're trying to, they have a theory about what the concept of stars is.
Yeah.
But I mean, even with the psychologist in that thing, how he speaks about, well, the reason it failed is because they let in too much light. And it comes back to what I was saying as well, is even the light from a torchlight, from a flame, should stave off the insanity, theoretically. Because there is at least a presence of light. I think perhaps the reason people lose it and is that they're in this darkness, they're in this place of fear, and then I think it's more got to do with the actual presence of the stars in the solar system. I think there's a point in the book where he talks about suddenly they realize how small and insignificant they are. And I don't know if anyone's ever done the thought experiment, but try and think of yourself in relation to the universe as a whole, and be prepared to just destroy your own sense of self and well-being for a short period of time.
Have you seen that video? Have you seen that video, The Power of 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it starts out with like a couple at a picnic rug, and then it just scales out to like 100 meters, and it's got I love the narrator. His voice is great, and then it goes to like 100 times of 100 meters, whatever number that is, and then it goes out and it just goes into the universe, and everything just you just get lost in the scale of the universe, and so yeah, that insignificance. I
I
guess.
think that's more what the story's getting at, is that the insanity is not so much because of the darkness. The darkness creates the environment in which the mind is vulnerable. I think a vulnerable mind thus exposed to the realization of your own level of insignificance. Plus, just how wrong they were about everything. You know, you hear the astrophysicists talking about, oh, there can't be more than 6 or 7 stars in the sky. You know, and
Yeah.
bombarded as they discovered they're in the middle of a, like a galactic nursery type of thing. Which is also one criticism that I had, is that throughout the whole book, Asimov is writing this from people from the... and then at that last little point, he mentions it's not like on Earth.
Right.
There's this many stars. It's like, oh, okay, now I'm out.
Okay.
Yeah, he broke out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also didn't enjoy that.
Like, just broke that fourth wall a little bit, and I'm like, okay, well, great. But I think that just the sheer shock of not being able to fathom the overall complexity of what you're dealing with might be,
Cool. All right, Sarah. Have you got anything interesting from the story that you found interesting? Yeah.
To be honest, I just quite enjoyed listening to that little exposition about the psychology. Because yeah, I agree. I think it wasn't so much the darkness as like they said like 30,000 stars in the sky.
Yep.
And there's just that sheer size, like it's so utterly huge. Like there's a fine line between sublime and utter madness. But yeah, I think I liked it as a kind of thought experiment. I mean, I agree with what you both said so far, because as a concept, it's interesting to imagine like living your whole life in the light, and then what if you're then deprived of that? But I do begs the question of me: how do they sleep? Do they shut their eyes?
Yeah.
Like,
that's a good point.
What do they do? Like,
What's that? It made me. Yeah.
Completely alien, right? They're not like us then in that regard, because we have to sleep, and we have to be in darkness because we shut our eyes. So it begs the question of me: what do they do?
Well,
how do they recharge?
Have you guys read the Plato's cave, the allegory of the cave?
Yeah.
So that's like the opposite, right? So they're all in well, not complete darkness, and there's a few other things going, but in the story it describes them coming out of the darkness and being just devastated by the light, like it burns their eyes, and they take a while to get accustomed to it, which suggests in that story it tells how humans adapt to these changes. And so, and like Warren said, with sure, they'll have the torches or the fire, so they'll probably adapt to them more. Like, you think that they would adapt to it rather than just submit to their own destruction. Usually humans have something called hope. I guess maybe.
But also, like they said, right? They've had centuries to prepare for this, because they've 400 years or something. They started whittling it down as to it's the gravitational pull and whatever.
Yeah.
But then you'd think, if they were thinking it's the darkness and not the sheer number of stars, and they were thinking we need to do something about this darkness, like, why didn't they get more wood? Why didn't they get more resources to burn things? Why didn't they designate spaces for burning? Why did they just go, well, the city's gonna burn?
So, okay. Yeah, no, I thought the same thing, but I want to bring this up, is the cults, right? Because, like, the cults, cults are really not that interesting in the grand scheme of civilization, right? They're like little toys that we look at and think that's interesting, but the fact that it's a big part of it, and I want to talk about Aton, the lead scientist, and his relationship to the cult, because I reckon he is like an ex-cultist, or he has some kind of relationship with the cult, because he just gets like frustrated whenever they bring up the cult, because the cult is right about what's happening, and I don't know, I think that is he an ex-cultist, or
Well,
yeah.
sorry, I think just to clarify, I think with my understanding of it as well is that I think that 400 years ago they started realizing that there is this slight wobble in the orbit. But as far as I thought it was only that they had only about 2 or 3 months since actually having confirmation that the eclipse was going to come. So that's also why they were being ridiculed in the papers and those types of things. Like, I mean, I think we would do it today as well. I mean, we do it all the time. Like all these doomsday cults that are, this is going to happen, 2012 all over again and all of that stuff. And
but they only had 6 torches. And they did say most of them were in the hideout, granted. But they would have known how long they said they burned for half an hour. And yet they knew the darkness was going to be more than half a day.
Well, but also the thing is, I mean, the darkness is due to the eclipse, and the eclipse took so it's dark for 2 hours.
No, we lost you there, Warren. Just say it again.
Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
They were going with that the eclipse was going to cause the darkness, but
Yep.
I mean, it took about an hour and a half to reach its zenith. So it's going to be dark for maybe, an hour tops? Like, you're not going to lose the whole civilization in an hour of darkness. And granted the stars and all of that, it just sort of stretches that belief a little bit too far. Because, and also, like they said, the torches only burn for a short period of time. But if they discovered that, like Sarah says, just have a whole bunch of torches everywhere.
Yeah.
Do they stipulate at any point how long the eclipse is going to last?
It says, the eclipse that results with the moon 7 times the apparent diameter of Beta covers all of Lagash and lasts well over half a day, so that no spot on the planet escapes the effects. And that's just quickly scanning. That's the only reference I could find for a time to do with the eclipse or this whole event.
Yeah.
That's just from quickly scanning when I got in.
So if they've always known day, then
We're dealing with extremes here, though, right?
yeah, half of everything. Like, it's like half of their civilization. That's the day.
Yeah, I can't relate to that, because I just think, I'll be fine. But for them, yeah. Well, I mean, okay,
let's go have a nap.
Well, let's bring that to the the exhibition when they talk about the ride. They have the mile-long tunnel.
Yeah, the tunnel. Yeah.
Right, which I don't know, it goes for 12 minutes or something, and then they come out after 12 minutes. They're not. Well, it's a weird relationship. Yeah.
I mean, Warren, in terms of professional opinion, like, could one lose your mind in 12 minutes?
There would have to be extreme trauma. Extreme.
And what about on the scale of civilization? Or a city, basically.
Yeah, look, on that scale, it's possible, but also not everyone. Like, as much as they talk about, okay, there's the people who are blind and who didn't see it, and the ones who go insane, and the children. I mean, we all know adults who have children's minds.
True.
For lack of that ability to just adapt and understand and deal with things. I mean, you have people that can just okay, whatever. They just would be able to just deal with this. Like, okay, this is me. Unless it's going just from a sheer numbers perspective, that there's not enough of those people, and those people aren't really trusted after the fact. Or maybe they die in the coming chaos that comes from when everyone else loses their mind. But yeah, it needs to be extreme trauma or adverse events that's going to cause, losing your mind is not something that just happens by the snap, the drop of a hat. Not normally.
I also found it quite interesting that the cultists, like the one group who is supposed to be prepared for this happening, like they knew it was coming, they know exactly what it is, and they're the ones rioting.
No, they got the others to riot. That's what I understood. They were like, go burn the observatory, and they were convincing all the civilians that were now panicking to be like, it's all their fault. Go destroy the observatory.
Yeah, because you'd expect them to be the voice of reason, to go, yes, we told you this was going to happen. Come, let's all go.
But they also, the head guy has an ulterior motive in destroying the science, right? Just in case it proves something, undermines the faith-based nature of the cult. So he's also manipulating them.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to I reckon Aton is an ex-cultist, and he's like, just because of finding science as like his religion, he's sort of ashamed that he was a cultist.
Or grew up in a cultist family.
Yeah, and so he's bitter about the cultists. Like, it's like, why do you care? Like, they're cults. Like, I don't care about cults. You know what I mean? It's like,
if you think about the people who go into the bunker, right?
Yeah.
Aren't they the next cultists?
Theoretically,
isn't the previous cycle's scientists the next cycle's cultists?
But this, I mean, we don't know what was left from the last time, but this time supposedly they have more scientific evidence, right? Because they said it's all been put in the bunker. But then again, they don't have evidence of the billions of stars, and not necessarily of the darkness, but they have more data in terms of the gravitational pull and things like that.
well, this is a good point to talk about the ending of this story, because I think there is, when it talks about illuminating the stars and their significance, that's one thing, but the actual action scene at the end is quite interesting, because there's a death, that there's kind of a heightened tension, well, to the characters. They kill Latimer. Latimer is the cultist guy that what does he do? He breaks in to their their wee little observatory on top of the hill. So, and it's do you reckon, because obviously the story stops, do you reckon that the cycle just happens again, or is there like a new sort of takeaway from this experience?
I think it's just doomed to repeat itself.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's repeated itself thousands of times before. That it just keeps going on and on and on. Every time there's an eclipse, every 2,400 or whatever years. And I like the idea of the bunker scientists becoming the new cultists.
Because I mean, they couldn't have been the first people to come up with the bunker idea.
But also think about it like this: take the period of 2,500 years. You take 2,500 years of societal progress. If you're holding to one belief throughout that whole period of time, you're going to be seen as a religion.
Yep.
By its very nature, whether your proof might be scientific, but at that point, a lot of proof to be stuff that's just based on faith as well. So I think that the likelihood of the bunker people becoming the next group of cultists, that makes sense to me, and I sort of like that as well in terms of just it goes with the cyclical nature.
And
I think there must be an element of progress with each cycle for whatever it's called, because if you think about the very beginning, like they've had to evolve their building material, they've had to evolve what's that called? Telescopes. Like they've had to evolve all of these things to make the bunker in the first place. Like they didn't develop everything like from scratch, and then to come back and then it's like, oh, it's building through here.
yeah,
You've got mad people and children, and then half a dozen scientists. Like I don't know. I think I don't know. Maybe it's just my optimistic nature. I feel like there must be an element, a degree of progress with each cycle.
there'd be a lot of archaeological evidence after like just half a day. Yeah, it must be. But yeah, I can't relate to that on Earth. I don't think our civilizations have had that sort of benefit or luxury to be able to go, ooh, here's this alien technology. Great, let's understand it or investigate. But yeah.
Well, this happened
Yeah.
when we've uncovered things from Roman era or like from the Egyptians. When we've uncovered things and we've gone like, what the heck's this? And then someone thinks they figured it out.
The Enlightenment in Western Europe, they found basically when they found all the Greek the Greek epics and all the idea of the democracy was basically reborn when they found the I forget what the stones are called in Greece, but they were like, oh wait a minute, you can like literally they found democracy in stones and were like, hey, did you know that we could do this? It was, so
Well, I
yeah,
mean, the key example is the pyramids.
but go on.
The skills needed to build the pyramids.
Did we learn anything from that? I don't think we did.
But they're not skills that are just done in maybe 1 or 2 generations. The level of accuracy in terms of a society that requires universities, it requires mathematicians, scientists.
There's so many questions about that. Like the pyramid's like 3,000 years old. Like we don't know. They're the pre Egyptians. We just don't know anything. We don't know enough about.
How long has mankind been kicking about?
And another issue
In
with
its
the
present form,
pyramids,
about 70,000 years.
Yeah. So let's say 70,000 years. So we would need to have been around 70,000 years before the pyramids to advance to that level of knowledge. But yet there's nothing. Like there's no trace of it. There's just we've got these massive stone.
but it's not necessarily
monuments.
that it's superior. It's also that it's just different. Like it's a way of thinking or approaching the topic that we haven't come across yet. Right?
Yeah.
That doesn't fit with us and the way that we're so indoctrinated into thinking of how things should be done. Like you never know. It could just be something like that. Like, Rosetta Stone. You just need a key to unlock that way of thinking. That then would make sense. Like I agree, it's very technical and it's challenging, but at the same time, it's not necessarily a question of time.
I think it also comes down to a question of developmental needs. Look for this in this civilization. They only develop light now, like torches now, right before the very end, because they've never had to develop it. There's a great satirical theory on the internet about the Back to the Future movies, and
Right.
because with after the first Back to the Future movie, with Marty being so good on his skateboard, he put that whole planet on a thing where skateboard technology is something that they cared about, which is why they have hoverboards. But when they go into the future in Back to the Future,
Yeah.
and that's got to do with just in terms of civilization's focus. So civilization like this civilization that doesn't need to focus on light or develop any light-based things won't bother doing that. My question is, why do they develop telescopes? Because we develop telescopes to look at the sky better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to look at the night sky, basically. You know, based on what I can understand, they don't ever have a night sky. So what would they need a telescope for?
To stare into the bright light.
But you get what I mean. So there's that, and I think, you know, we have to take into account. There's also, you know, going back to our own Earth, we have lots of mysteries. There's the pyramids for one. There's in Rome, there's a type of concrete that the ancient Romans used to build that's stronger than any concrete that we can do now, and it doesn't give off any of the toxic fumes that our concrete does. We have no idea how to make that. With all of our technology and all our ability to analyze the chemical composition of the concrete, we can't make that type of concrete. So there's always those things, and like I say, we need those Rosetta Stones, we need those elements just to rediscover the information.
Right, so that's quite oh, sorry, do you want to go on there? Sorry for cutting in.
Well, I was just going to say, with that, I mean, even in our own civilizations, we've lost so much information.
Right.
And we've had a longer period of time to refine it. They're only working on 2,500 year periods. And 2,500 years is from when the pyramids were built to the year 0 or the year 1.
Yeah.
You know, we've almost gone double that since the pyramids have been built, and we still don't really know how they did it. So there might also be that factor, so they don't have enough time between cycles to, you know, further.
Well, sorry.
No, carry on.
It's hard to know when there's a lull or the end of a sentence, but no, you're saying about the telescopes, because who knows? Maybe in a previous cycle, that's what was in a bunker, right? They said we're going to need these, so then they focused on it. Yeah, so now that there's torches in that bunker, they're going to be like, well, these obviously were important. Let's focus on this. Yeah, so you never know. I mean, yeah, could be different, could be better. Or
I think it comes down to what
so much on torches, they forget the telescopes, and then they're caught off guard like that.
And I think it comes down to your own personal viewpoint. Like yours is a lot more optimistic that they better cycle, whereas I'm apparently a lot more pessimistic, and it's like, nope, these guys are still. Yeah.
All right. Let's. And I know we were talking about the cycles is in regards to the story, but did you guys? Man, I think we've talked about it a lot. Do you guys want to talk about anything else, or should we go on to giving the score?
No, I think we can get on the score.
Let's get onto the score, and feel free to give a little spiel about you know, for your reasoning. There's 4 of us today. Better make sure our aggregate is divided by 4. Warren, we give our scores out of 500. This is Dean's baby. It's apparently you shoot from the hip and you land on a good score apparently. And with that, I think Dean, you should go first.
Okay, so a good score out of 500. I think this is gonna go for a 310 out of 500.
All right, let me.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. I did find though that I enjoyed talking about it more than what I enjoyed reading it.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm kind of on the similar wave. I'm kind of on the similar wavelength. Yeah. Who's next? Warren, do you want to have a crack?
Okay, I will. I'm gonna also just reason out.
Yeah.
Why we're gonna be. I'm gonna go at about a 360. Okay. From a thought experiment perspective, that's worth at least 200 points. From a good psychological perspective, in terms of explaining things, that's worth another 100 points. I liked some of the concepts. I liked how it went about. Some of the stuff was a bit out there. Breaking the fourth wall lost points for me. You know, it sort of took me out of the story. I also think that as like I said, as a thought experiment, I think it's a really intriguing concept, which I think lends itself to why it's more fun to talk about than actually read. And you've got to give him a little bit of extra credit just for the fact of realizing that we're going to get to a point where there's going to be some weird alphanumeric names, which I sort of like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'd say about it.
I really wanted to talk about that. I was like, I've seen some other science fiction books do it as well, and I just think, why? Like, are you trying to tell me something? And then when you said that, and then when you said the emails, I was thinking, oh no. And even not emails, even some parents are going with some super original names, and there are some names that I don't mind as original names. There are some that I just think, okay. And then the numbers thing is just, yeah, does it suggest that it's like, well, we're just tired and we'll just throw on some numbers? I don't know. You're like John the Second, right? You're the second child. I don't know. Whatever. Sorry. Yeah. Did you want to?
I sort of like that because if you have a society that doesn't rely on things like identity numbers or things like that, or social security numbers, and everything is based on your names, and your names have to become unique. So it's like, okay, you are the first Dean, so you are Dean 1.
Right on, right on.
Yes.
As opposed to being Timothy 7362. And just the fact that you came up with that concept or realized that we might run into difficulties with names 80 years ago, you've got to tip your hat to him for that.
Cool. All right. Sarah, do you want to go next or?
Sure. Yeah. See, I didn't really enjoy it. I found it confusing. I thought he was just being what's that word? I can't think of the fancy word. I thought he was just being an ass with the numbers, being like, I'm so sci-fi. Ooh.
Yeah.
So I didn't get the whole, uniqueness aspect. I enjoyed talking about it, but I'm gonna go at 278. Kind of low.
278.
Yeah.
Ooh, it is what it is, and that's a score. Let me.
Done messed up.
That just confused. He confused me too much.
All right. But what's interesting is that I had a score in mind before our discussion, and it was quite a good discussion, and I quite liked hearing what other people thought about the story, so that kind of helped it. But when I come back to the actual storytelling side of things, I just hate exposition when it's not needed. I know it's a strong word, right? But when it's like when the author just what do you call it, when they go into when they just go on to explain something, and even when Sheeran, the psychologist, is go, well, let me tell you the layman thing. This is the author saying, okay, let me make this accessible. It's like, don't explain it. Just tell us what's happening in the story. And I think, and it could have had more action if you just tell us, what's at stake with the universe, with the eclipse happening. You could describe the eclipse happening, and you could sort of tell the story in that way, and or show this, not tell, show the story. That's the trick with storytelling, and maybe with the infancy of science fiction, this was just probably just a part of the environment or the milieu of science fiction writers at the time, and so but the redeeming side of it is the premise. The premise is just is exceptional, and I'm a little bit more swayed from Warren's explanation of sort of the stakes that's at play with how in this environment these people feel more well, not feel, but they just are more vulnerable to the psychological like, well, what do you call it, not the doom and gloom.
It's your score, man.
All right, okay. I gotta go for I'm gonna go for 317. And that's
A nice odd number overall.
yeah. I All right. Well, okay. With that done, let's do the aggregate score. Find out what the aggregate score is. So
Let me know when you're
as
ready.
yeah, I know. Oh no. Wait a minute. I've
I
well.
think it's gonna be about
Can
3 or
you
5.
can you guess what's happened? Can you guess what's happened to my
Decimal
egg? Yeah, decimal points. I even though I
Shit out.
I don't know. I do everything before the Okay. Yeah. All right. We are ready. Okay. Aggregate score. So we've all read Nightfall by Isaac Asimov, and we've given our scores. The total aggregate score with oh no, wait a minute. I gotta save it. Is that an anticlimax? I don't know. Without further ado, trumpets. Your score by total aggregate is 316 out of a possible 500. I know what that means. It means it's probably an alright story. I would definitely recommend it to anyone who was. No, wait a minute. If you've listened to this far, then you've probably read it already. There's no way that you've listened to us blabber on about the whole story. And anyway.
If you have, then you can skip it. Have to read it.
I don't know. I think we sold it quite well. Like, if you heard us talking about this book, you'd be going, "Oh, that sounds kind of alright. I'm going to read that." And then you're going to read it and you go, "What a bunch of
What?
idiots."
They'll be like, Sarah's right.
Well, there we go. Team Sarah. Go Team Sarah. Alright.
I think it helps that I don't know who the heck this guy is. Because they'll keep going, oh, it's Asimov. Ooh.
Oh, you know what that is? This is time for when we compare it to our other stories. So our lowest story is Harrison Bergeron with 301. And then that brings Nightfall to our second lowest score of 316. It's lower than the Moral-Virologist. Actually, I like the Moral-Virologist, so that's okay. But it's our second lowest score, so I'm not gonna swear, but get stuffed, Isaac. You're only like the godfather. You're the godfather of science fiction, but you got our second lowest score. Okay.
What's our highest score?
Do you want to know? I know which book it is, but it's Burning Chrome
Who's
with
the author? Who was the author? I can't.
William Gibson's Burning Chrome 435. That was your book as well that you recommended, but
I don't think I was there for that one, right?
nah, but
That's why it's so high. I didn't bring it down.
yeah. Oh, Dean,
Surprise.
count your lucky stars. Okay.
You can add my score after.
I don't. Look, we've got rules. The rules are. What are the rules? I don't know. That's it. Okay.
So who's choosing the next one?
Dean.
Yeah, I'll let you guys know what it's gonna be.
Yes, I feel that's an anticlimax, a double anticlimax. Okay. Alright. Cool. What do? We gotta go. We gotta finish this. Alright. See you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Thank you, Warren. I lived in Africa for a little bit. That's why I was gonna say, like, what?
It is something.
No, you mean Kenya, darling.
Well, So